Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of English Podcast. I'm Sara, and today we've got something really exciting to talk about: holiday experiences. Who doesn't love a good vacation, right? Whether it's lounging on a sunny beach, hiking up breathtaking mountains, or exploring vibrant city streets, holidays are always packed with memories that last a lifetime. But today we're not just talking about vacations. We're also diving into some useful English phrases, vocabulary, and grammar that you can use when you're talking about your own holiday experiences. So, if you've ever wanted to know how to sound more natural when chatting about your latest trip, or if you're planning a vacation and need some handy expressions, you're in the right place. We'll explore some fun travel idioms, learn how to describe different types of holiday destinations, and even touch on a bit of grammar to help you share your travel stories with confidence. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, grab your travel journal, get comfy, and let's start this adventure together. So, when it comes to holidays, one of the first things that comes to mind is, where should we go? There are so many amazing places to explore. Some people love the beach, where they can relax by the ocean, soak up the sun, and maybe even go snorkeling or surfing. Others prefer the mountains, with fresh air, scenic hikes, and that peaceful feeling you get when you're surrounded by nature. And of course, there are those who enjoy the buzz of big cities, discovering new cultures, trying local food, and sightseeing. When we talk about holiday destinations in English, there's some important vocabulary that can really help you express yourself clearly. For example, words like destination, which simply means the place you're going, or itinerary, which is your planned schedule of activities. Another useful word is sightseeing. It's what we do when we visit famous places like landmarks, museums, or monuments. You could say, I went sightseeing in Paris and saw the Eiffel Tower. Now, let's talk about how to describe these places. Adjectives are super helpful here. You might say, the beach was beautiful, or the mountains were breathtaking. Notice how we use those adjectives to really bring the place to life. You can go even further by saying something like, the beach had crystal clear water, or the city was full of vibrant culture. Adjectives help paint a picture and make your descriptions more vivid. Oh, and have you ever heard the idiom off the beaten path? This is a great one to use when you're talking about a place that's not very touristy or well known. For example, we found a little cafe off the beaten path and it was amazing. It's perfect for describing those hidden gems that you discover on your travels. Another idiom I love is a change of scenery. Sometimes we just need a break from our usual routine, and we say, I need a change of scenery. It means going somewhere different to refresh your mind and spirit, like taking a trip to the mountains after spending too much time in the city. So, whether you're heading to a quiet beach, an adventurous mountain range, or a bustling city, having the right vocabulary and expressions will help you talk about your holiday destinations like a pro. Now, once you've picked your perfect destination, the next big step is planning the vacation itself. For some people, this is the most exciting part, while for others, it can feel a little overwhelming. But don't worry, I've got you covered with some useful vocabulary and phrases to make this process smooth. First up, let's talk about reservations. This is a key word when you're booking things like flights, hotels, or even tours. You might say, I made a reservation for a hotel in Rome, or I need to make a reservation for dinner at that popular restaurant. It's important to get these things done in advance so everything is ready for you when you arrive. Speaking of booking, that's another great verb to use, to book. You can book flights, book accommodation, or book a tour. For example, I booked my flight for next Friday, or we booked a tour to explore the historic sites. Now let's move on to itinerary, which is basically your schedule for the trip. When planning your vacation, it's helpful to create an itinerary so you know what you'll be doing each day. For example, our itinerary includes a city tour on the first day, followed by a trip to the museum on day 2. This word can be a little tricky to pronounce, but once you've got it, it's super useful for any trip. And when you're talking about future plans, it's a great opportunity to practice using the future tense. we often use going to or will when we're planning something. For example, I'm going to visit the Colosseum, or we will try some local cuisine. Both are correct, but going to is a bit more casual and commonly used in conversation. Oh, and here's a fun phrase you can use when you're getting ready to go: catch a flight. It's a casual way of saying you're taking a flight. So instead of saying, I'm flying to New York tomorrow, you could say, I'm catching a flight to New York tomorrow morning. It adds a bit of that natural native speaker feel to your sentences. So whether you're booking your accommodation, planning your itinerary, or getting ready to catch that flight, having the right phrases on hand can make your travel planning much easier and a lot more fun. Now that we've covered how to plan your vacation, let me share one of my favourite holiday stories with you. It was a few years ago, and I had always dreamed of visiting Italy. So, I finally decided to go. I remember booking a flight to Rome and planning every detail of the trip. It was such an exciting moment. I couldn't wait to explore the history, the food, and, of course, the famous sights. When I arrived in Rome, the first thing I did was head straight to the Colosseum. I had always seen it in pictures, but seeing it in real life was just incredible. It was so much bigger and more impressive than I ever imagined. While I was there, I went on a guided tour, which I highly recommend. The guide explained all the history behind the Colosseum, and it really brought the place to life. I spent the next few days exploring the city, visiting places like the Vatican, the Spanish Steps, and the Trevi Fountain. Speaking of the Trevi Fountain, have you heard of the tradition where you throw a coin into the fountain to make a wish? Well, I did, and it was such a fun experience. I'll let you know if the wish ever comes true. Throughout my trip, I tried to immerse myself in the local culture as much as possible. I visited local cafes, tried new dishes. Oh, the pasta in Italy is just next-level delicious. And I even tried speaking a little Italian, which was a fun challenge. During that trip, I learned a lot about travel and how sometimes things don't always go as planned. For example, I got lost one afternoon while wandering through the narrow streets of Rome. At first, I was a little stressed, but then I realized it was part of the adventure. I discovered this charming little restaurant off the beaten path, and it ended up being one of the best meals of my entire trip. It just goes to show sometimes getting a bit lost leads to the best experiences. Now, when telling stories like this, it's a great opportunity to practice using the past tense. Notice how I'm using verbs like visited, went, tried, and explored. All of these are in the past tense because I'm talking about something that has already happened. When you're sharing your own travel stories, this is the tense you'll use the most. I also used a few fun travel-related phrases. For example, I mentioned that the restaurant I found was off the beaten path, meaning it wasn't in a typical tourist area. It was more hidden and special. I also said I tried to immerse myself in the local culture, which means I really tried to experience the culture deeply by interacting with local people and trying new things. So, that was my unforgettable trip to Italy. I'm sure you have your own travel stories too, and I'd love to hear them. Next time you're telling someone about your adventures, remember to use some of the vocabulary and past tense forms we talked about to make your story more engaging. Of course, not every part of a holiday goes perfectly, right? Even on my trip to Italy, I faced a few challenges, and I think that's all part of the experience. One of the biggest hiccups was actually right at the beginning. My flight was delayed by several hours. I remember sitting in the airport feeling so frustrated. But in moments like that, you just have to go with the flow, or, as we say, roll with the punches. It's a great phrase for handling unexpected problems. Then there was another little mishap when I lost my luggage for a whole day. Luckily, I had packed a few essentials in my carry-on, which saved me. By the next day, my suitcase finally showed up at my hotel, but it definitely taught me an important travel lesson. Always pack a few important things in your hand luggage just in case. When you're talking about challenges during a holiday, it's a great opportunity to use conditional sentences, those if and would sentences, that help describe what could have happened if things were different. For example, I could say, if I hadn't packed extra clothes in my carry-on, I would have had nothing to wear. This type of sentence is called a third conditional, and we use it when we're talking about something that didn't happen, but imagining the consequences if it had. Another situation that I had to navigate was dealing with language barriers. I spoke a little Italian, but not enough to have full conversations. So there were definitely moments when communication was a challenge, but that's also where I learned to be more patient and creative. Sometimes gestures or a friendly smile can go a long way in bridging the gap. And of course, there's the classic travel mistake of getting lost. Like I mentioned earlier, I took a wrong turn in Rome and ended up completely off course. But instead of panicking, I used my map and asked a local for directions, using the little Italian I knew. It turned out to be a wonderful experience because I discovered a hidden restaurant and got to chat with some locals. So sometimes those little mistakes lead to great adventures. These challenges really taught me to stay flexible and to expect the unexpected when traveling. It's part of what makes a holiday so memorable. You learn to adapt and grow through these experiences. So, whenever you find yourself facing a few bumps in the road during a holiday, remember, it's all part of the journey. And hey, if you ever miss a flight or lose your luggage, you'll have some great stories to tell when you get home. And you know, beyond all the fun and the occasional challenges, one of the best parts of traveling is what you take away from the experience, especially when it comes to culture. Every destination has its own unique traditions, languages, and way of life. And being able to immerse yourself in that is such a rewarding part of any holiday. For me, visiting Italy wasn't just about sightseeing or enjoying the food. It was about experiencing the Italian way of life, even if just for a little while. I learned how important family and tradition are in Italian culture, and how much pride they take in their cuisine. Little things like how they greet each other, the way they enjoy long meals together, and even their relaxed pace of life. It all made me think about how we live day to day. Travel teaches us that there's no one right way to live or to see the world. It opens our eyes to new perspectives and helps us appreciate different cultures. That's why I always encourage people to step out of their comfort zone, visit new places, and connect with people from different backgrounds. It's a great way to grow, both personally and in terms of language skills. Speaking of language, every trip offers a chance to pick up some new vocabulary or practice what you've already learned. Whether it's learning how to order food in another language or just saying thank you to a locale, these small interactions can really enrich your holiday experience. So, as you plan your next trip, think about how you can not only enjoy the sights and sounds, but also what cultural takeaways you might bring back with you. After all, travel is the best way to broaden your horizons and your English vocabulary at the same time. Before we wrap things up, let's quickly recap some of the key language points we covered today. We talked about a lot of useful travel-related vocabulary like reservations, itinerary, sightseeing, and to book. These are all essential words for planning and talking about holidays. We also explored some fun idioms like off the beaten path for those hidden non-touristy places, and a change of scenery when you need a refreshing break from your usual routine. Don't forget the phrase catch a flight, which is a casual way of saying you're flying somewhere. Grammar-wise, we touched on using the past tense to tell stories with verbs like visited, explored, and tried. Plus, we dived into conditional sentences when reflecting on what could have happened if things went differently. Remember the example. If I hadn't packed extra clothes, I would have had nothing to wear. So, whether you're planning a vacation or sharing a travel story, you now have a whole new set of vocabulary, phrases, and grammar tools to help you express yourself confidently in English. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation on holiday experiences. I hope you had fun and learned a few things along the way. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next episode. Safe travels and happy learning.